And we do think Jen is right. We all know the words, should be able to sing along. And we would like someone to create a song.
If you write it, she will sing it.
There you go. No, I will not.
Oh, trust me, folks, enough bourbon, she will.
Yeah, that's possible. So, we all know it.
You're listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, where HIPAA and humor collide to make learning fun. Your delightful hosts are Donna Grindle and David Sims. Relax. HIPAA help is on the way.
Welcome to episode 347 of the Help Me with HIPAA podcast. We are the longest running HIPAA podcast in the history of the universe. That's right. You are in the right place. Today we're going to be talking about an SMB cyber survey.
Just one SMB's response.
Yeah.
And we're going to discuss how different it is from others, like maybe ones that you know or work at.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to draw your own conclusions from the answers.
Mm-hmm.
So, as always, our show is sponsored to you by Cardin, HIPAA for MSPs, and Security First IT.
Yes, it is.
And thanks for the donors. Appreciate it. You are always awesome. And you're always on my mind.
And for those who want to go to the privacy and security boot camp, that is going to be awesome.
You better hurry. Tickets are selling out quickly.
We don't even know when this one's coming out, do we? So, PrivacySecBootCamp.com.
Yep. 3.5
days of privacy and security. Absolute awesome excitement.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So go there. We've got the agenda out there now. We're loading everything in. By the time you hear this, you better be signing up because it is very limited seating. We have a very limited space on purpose, mostly because we can't imagine continuing to scale further. We are supersizing what we've done before with the HIPAA boot camp. So check it out. Sign up. Join us September 12th through the 15th in Louisville, Kentucky.
Yeah, that's right.
Make sure you're there on Tuesday night so you don't miss the Bourbon and Breeches happy hour.
Mm-hmm.
You're welcome.
And the motto for this year, and maybe every year, is this ain't your mama's privacy and security.
No, it ain't. No, it ain't. All right.
Going to be a
I
fun
think
time.
we've done all of our things.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, though, if you do want to go and you are a member of or want to become a member of the Cardin Club or HIPAA for MSPs, oh, we got a good deal for you.
Yeah.
So if you join either of those memberships, let us know. We have killer offers only for those members.
Yeah.
All
Everybody's excited about those.
Heck yeah. All right. Here we go. We're going to jump into the HIPAA
Say what?
segment. And this is an email that comes from Jen. And you remember the scripts thing we talked about a while back?
Yeah, it was May of 2021, almost a year ago.
Oh, my gosh.
That'll be important in a minute.
Yeah. I know we've mentioned it several times since then, but this is one of the few times when we kind of took a live incident and recorded as we were watching it.
Yep.
And it's probably one of the most somber shows we've ever done.
Well, you know, at the beginning, it was interesting because we were like, this is happening and OMG, we're going to read it to you live as we see it. And at first it was more about, okay, that is not the way you should be. I think it was a patient saying, how am I going to reschedule? I can't figure out. And somebody being helpful that worked there said, tell me your name, your doctor.
Yeah. Give me some PHI.
Yeah, give me all your information and I will take care of it for you. And then somebody apparently said, no, let's don't do that because patients were publishing it. Mm-hmm. And then they said, well, DM me. So we were continuing to watch that discussion and then it got darker and it shared live reminding us and everyone else, this is a big deal when patients can't get care.
All right.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
But
the whole thing about it's about patient care, I mean, that brought it to life, if nothing else did.
Big time. Yeah.
So the email is in response to that, and it reads from Jen. Remember that podcast y'all did months ago about the breach at Scripps Health? I just received a letter from them, and sing along with me, quote unquote, maintaining the confidentiality and security of your information, ... end quote.
Yeah, we know where that goes.
Yeah, I don't know if I can put any music to that, but I know the words.
Yeah, we all know the words. It we take it seriously.
Yeah. And she continues with, the ransomware did not access the EHR, and Scripps definitely deserves credit, but their communication was a complete mess.
As I mentioned, that's what got us in there in the first place.
Yeah.
But interesting, as you say, that we were doing this in March. So
No, May.
Or May, rather. Mm-hmm. So we know it's been more than 60 days.
Just a little bit.
Little bit. We do, it remains to be seen how it's going to, but we said then, these things take years to flush out of the system, if you will. So it's going to be interesting to see if there's any response to those things that happened. And we do think Jen is right. We all know the words, should be able to sing along. And we would like someone to create a song.
If you write it, she will sing it.
There you go. No, I will not.
Oh, trust me, folks, enough bourbon, she will.
Yeah, that's possible. So we all know it. But say no more. At least the notifications have gone out.
Yep.
So we have to give them, and it says that it didn't, and I'm sure that the process is a long time, and this gets back to that whole thing of, how do you possibly know who to notify?
Mm-hmm.
And if you just notify everybody and say, well, we don't have any evidence anything happened, then people don't like that either. So this is a very complex scenario that I don't know the solution to, but I know it's hard to make it work the way it's designed. So.
Well, I don't know if you remember, but when we went back to that site or to the Facebook feed, I think maybe the following week.
We did a follow-up discussion about it, yeah.
But people were saying, it's been a week and I've not received a notification. Remember? And I'm like, you are not going to receive it. That's the difference between expectations and reality.
There's no way that's going to happen. You're exactly right. I forgot about that. Yep. See, you just told me you don't remember things.
I don't remember things I need to remember.
Right before we started. All right. So the next thing, though, while we're in this little segment here, I do want to shout out to my friend Glenn.
What's up, Glenn?
Yeah. Glenn, and we were having dinner Saturday night, and in the middle of the conversation, now, there is not a technical bone in Glenn's body. He is very good on a piano.
But there is technically a bone in his body.
Yeah, there's plenty of bones, but they are not technical bones. He's got the hip bone and connected to but
and that is a song.
It is. Now we're on a song thing. But the only way that HIPAA applies to him is as a patient.
Okay.
But he pipes up in the middle of dinner and says, hey, by the way, your podcast does pop up in my rotation from time to time, and I do listen to it. And every time I do, I just laugh and laugh.
I don't know why.
I'm like, well, that's the most important thing to us. But he said he also is just blown away and surprised by all the things that are going on and things that happen with our clients, like this discussion we just had about scripts. And he was like, it's amazing to think about and scary to think about how much of that is really going on out there. And I would have no idea if I wasn't listening. But mostly you guys are funny. But this little anecdote, lets me give a shout out to Glenn. If he happens to catch this episode, you know it's you, boo, that I'm talking to. But the other piece was it reminded me that I was speaking at an event, and someone told me that they listened to the podcast, and I asked if they, had their, business owners happen to know what kind of business it was. And the response was, no, they're not technical enough. And at the time, I was just like, we really try hard not to be technical, and was kind of questioning that. And then like a week later, Glenn tells me that he gets a lot out of it. So the point is, you don't have to be technical or in healthcare to get things out of this podcast.
Technically.
So technically, you shouldn't. Glenn is proof. You just have to be willing to learn. So if you are holding off sharing this podcast or even an episode here and then, not
shame
like,
on you.
hey, maybe when you hear an episode that you think applies, sharing it out with others, they don't have to be a regular listener, but there is value to many other people. So don't assume that people can't get things out of these kinds of things, and they wouldn't be educated.
That's right.
Which,
Quit trying to keep a brother down.
All right, moving along. I don't know how we are going to do an intro to this new, but it's a new little tiny thing that we're going to try to do every week.
We should call it, instead of the 405D tip of the day, the 405 double D tip of the day.
There we go. 405 double D tip of the day. But it's part of our mission on the 405D committee, or task group rather, to make sure that all the work we're doing actually gets out into the industry and people know about it. So we're going to, under our ambassador program assignment, not screw it up, hopefully. And we're going to do a tip of the day, tip of the week, double D, tip of the week, something. We will eventually call it. So here's a little tip about something that you can get out on the 405D website, which is, do you know the web address, David? Do you know it?
No, not right off. I'm just kidding. 405d.gov.
.hhs.gov.
Oh, yeah, that thing. I bookmark it. I don't look at it.
See? There you go.
Again,
we'll try not to screw this up. But we do have a specific link. If you go to the website, one of the areas is it tells you about Hiccup, and it specifically has a section, Hiccup's top 5 threats.
Mm-hmm.
And so for each threat, you can go out on the website, and for each one, there's specific collateral you can use for planning and education. There's a flyer that has a front and back piece that explains the threat, and then on the front and then on the back, or however you want to look at it. It could be the front to you and the back to somebody else. Anyway, it explains ways that you can protect yourself from the threat on one side, and then on the other side, it explains the threat. What is the impact? How does it impact you? What's a real world story of what could happen? And that was like one of the first things I worked on when I got on the Wave 1 group, is those 5 flyers and some other ones that we were doing. There's also slides from a presentation that explains the Hiccup concept, the individual threat, and then the recommendations for mitigating that threat in a slideshow. And then for each, there's a poster with quick reminders about that threat and things for workforce education. So you can just print that out and put it up. I recommend putting it on the back of the restroom stall doors.
I can hear that now. Why is there all this stuff all over the floor? Because I was trying to read the poster.
See? We're going to try not to screw it up. But the good news is it's all freely available. It's all very helpful, and it all helps with your cybersecurity program. So
Yes, it does.
figure out how it will work best in your program. It's readily available. One for each of the 5 threats. Learn about them all.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a link here that'll take you straight to the 5 threats, or you can go find it under the Protecting Patients section of the 405D website at
405d.hhs.gov.
Thank you.
I use this information a lot to send out because, believe it or not, sometimes people think, wow, David actually come up with this idea to do something with cybersecurity, and it's not, best practices, it's David's idea. And that's not the case. I mean, I am brilliant, but I do rely on, these types of things to back me up. So when I send this stuff out, they go, oh, wow, this is stuff that, these acronyms in the government say to use. So it does help. It helps bolster my approach.
Okay. There you go. Bolstering David's approach. We all know he needs it.
And if you want to know my contribution to the flyers, if you look at the little smiley faces,
those aren't out yet.
those aren't out. When they come out, there's the frowny face. I had them change it from a frowny face to a face palm.
Smack my head. SMH.
Anyway.
I thought it works great.
I think so too.
Of course, who knows? They'll change all of that by the time it finally comes out. But I'm excited about that. That whole series we're doing. I think it's good.
All right. Let's jump into our topic for today. We are going to talk about one company's cyber survey.
Just one. And really just one question on the survey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
So, one. So, we've had a lot of discussions lately about, even it's a big topic on 405D is how to get the message out. Everybody knows you look at the enterprises and they have the CISOs and the CIOs and the C blah, blah. They got all these layers of people worried about cybersecurity. And the smaller businesses, we're talking under 1,000 employees. They're like, yeah, that's a thing. Mm-hmm. They're not, it's just they may worry about it, but if they are worrying about it, are they worrying about it the right way and the right things? So, David, tell us about this survey and why you send it out and who you give it to.
So, this is a survey that we usually do as part of, you could call it like an initial prospecting, or if somebody calls and they want us to do some one-off work, we ask them some questions because I want to know where they are with certain aspects of security. Like what are your expectations around that? What are you worried about? And of course, some of it's because I like to, gather the information for data. Some of it's also because it lets me know how I can come back and then offer solutions for things that they're worried about, all that type of stuff. And so that's why I asked. This particular one was a prospect who had us come in and just do some one-off work. And I sent the survey out, it asked things, your normal stuff like where do I send my bill to? Because that's important. And then it asks other things about what are you concerned about? And this really helps me with a prospect to really learn what's keeping them up at night, because I want to solve those bigger issues they feel like they have and then go from there. But what I often find is they're not worried about what they should be worried about.
So this one we're going to discuss, it's not an anomaly, an outlier at all. This is not an uncommon response.
No, but the other thing, and I sent this to you, I sent a screenshot of it to you, and I didn't give you any, backstory, because I want you to look at it And I want you to see, what do you glean from it? Because it's not just sometimes what they answer, it's what they don't answer.
Exactly.
Or it's how they position certain things, that you get an understanding that they don't know what they don't know. And sometimes they'll tell you that, oh, I'm not at all worried about this, but I'm very worried about this other thing, but they tie together. So there's no way you can be worried about one and not the other. But
you don't know that.
Right. They don't know that these things work together. Now, more interesting is that this particular one came from a company of about 100 employees, so not super small. They have internal IT staff. Okay?
Oh.
But the person who answered this was not the IT person. It was one of the C-suite people.
Okay.
All right.
So
there you go.
we could approach it when we're looking at this, that they're certain that IT has it handled or believe it, but that, well, we'll get into it as we discuss it. Okay, so
because you could also make a case that there's not much communication happening between IT and the upper echelon.
And often that's a problem created by both sides.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, this is one of the things that we talk about a lot in the HIPAA boot camp, and we're going to definitely take that a step further in that discussion at PriceTech boot camp about we all have to be on the cybersecurity team. But in order to do that, we all have to actually communicate, you know, using an agreed upon language that we are aware of the definitions.
Yes. On this question, so what I ask is, how concerned are you about the following? And you've seen the things where it's kind of a 1 to 5, but I don't say on a scale from 1 to 5, I give it a name. So a 1 would be, I couldn't care less about it, which I tend to look at that column first because nothing should be in that column. And
this
then,
particular one had one item in that column.
Yeah. And then it says the next one is rarely concerned, which would be a 2, sometimes concerned, 3, that would be a 3, often concerned. And then the top one is I lose sleep over it. I don't want to see a lot in that column necessarily either, but initially that's okay, but I definitely want to get it down from there. Like I don't want you to be losing sleep over stuff if you're hiring us. I want to get that down. But there should be nothing that you don't care less about. You should care about them. So
of these things on this list.
Yeah. So our goal is to kind of compress it from the edges and push it in so that, sometimes it concerns you, but somebody's handling it and, all that good stuff. You know what you should know.
So, that being said, so I just totaled and they couldn't care less about one item on the list. They're rarely concerned about 3, sometimes concerned about 3 more, and often concerned about 5.
Yeah.
So,
and they're not at all losing sleep over anything.
Not losing sleep over anything, which, that could mean a lot of things. Because they're not your client, you don't know, and they have internal IT. So there might be a lot of reasons they're not.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that there are 3 they're rarely concerned about and 1 they could care less about, because they should all run about sometimes and often.
Right.
For the most part, in what you're asking. So let's review the ones that they are often or often. Whichever one irritates people you don't want to miss. That word is something that just stirs up debate.
It does often.
It often does. Okay, so number 1 that they are often concerned about, phishing.
Yeah.
That's good. They should be.
Mm-hmm.
They should be concerned about employees causing data loss or security incident, third-party software vendor breach, data backup and recovery, and then the generic thing that you have on there, the cyber threats and incidents.
Right. Yeah. So because
it's a pretty solid list.
And the reason I put that generic one on there is because I noticed that some people don't necessarily understand specific things. Most people understand phishing, and we'll get to that in a minute, which I think kind of bears out what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah.
is that how can you be often concerned about cyber threats and incidents, but yet not at all concerned about a specific cyber threat?
Exactly. Right. So they're often concerned about these things, and that matters as we move forward in our list.
All right, carry on.
Because then I'm like, as you, how are you? So the number one threat that we tell people they should worry about and that they should have a plan for is
Ransomware.
And they are sometimes concerned about that.
Yeah.
It should definitely be an often concern, but it is a sometimes concern.
But they're often concerned about phishing, which more often leads to ransomware.
Agreed. And, so, and phishing is going to connect to a lot of other things, but it's like that connection is not happening.
Yeah.
So ransomware, number one thing every business should worry about today. They sometimes worry about it. And the next one, email security, they're sometimes worried about.
Yeah, which if you got good email security, is probably going to lessen the phishing, which lessens the ransomware.
And if you're really worried about phishing, you should also worry about email security.
Yeah.
But no. And then sometimes concerned about data in the cloud. Okay. All right. So they're employees causing a data loss or security incident they're often concerned about, but they're only sometimes concerned about data in the cloud. Okay.
Yeah.
The rarely concerned is loss or theft of equipment or data, compliance or regulatory failure. So I'm going to assume they're not a well-regulated industry, their segment.
No, but they are heavily in the supply chain. But they are not regulated.
They're involved in the supply chain for regulated industries, but they're not going to worry about regulatory requirements.
I would say they're just supply chain, period. I don't know that it's specifically for regulated anything.
Okay. So yeah, they're not worried about regulatory compliance.
I would say if anything, they may have some FDA compliance potentially, but I don't know how deep that goes. But what was really interesting to me here is the often concern, like I'm very concerned about this, was employees causing data loss or a security incident, but they're rarely concerned about loss or theft of equipment or data, which almost goes hand in hand. Because
indeed,
if you lose equipment or data, then you probably have data loss or a security incident. Duh.
And who's going to lose that?
An employee.
An employee. So maybe they think they got everything encrypted and they don't have to worry about it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
it's one of those things where you've taken those personality analysis tests where they ask the same question a different way. And then this is kind of the same thing here.
Well, yeah, we do that when we're asking we do a PHI survey. And we learn the hard way that you have to ask the same question multiple ways. Because you can say, do you access PHI on a mobile device? And they'll say no. And then a little bit later, you say, do you access PHI on an iPad? And they'll say yes. I've seen it happen.
Yeah.
Plenty of times. So we've got the loss or theft, but here's another thing that ties back that they're rarely concerned about. Business or executive email compromise. If you're concerned about phishing, why would you not be concerned about email compromise? Again, it's that not making that connection that phishing will compromise an email account. I don't think there's a full understanding. They know they're supposed to worry about phishing, but I don't know if there's a full understanding that what happens when you're phished.
Yeah.
And they're sometimes concerned about email security, but rarely concerned about business and executive email compromise. So, I mean, again, there's a disconnect there just in the way they're looking at things, as you mentioned, about a specific item versus a generic item.
Yeah.
And then the couldn't care less about. Okay, so remember we said phishing. couldn't care less about social engineering.
Wow. Yeah, that one just made me shake my head immediately. I'm like, what?
They don't know what that is.
No.
They don't. No. There's no way they know.
Mm-mm. Well, when I really look at the list, I kind of get the feeling that they are often concerned. They're often concerned about the things that they hear about the most. They hear about phishing. They hear about vendor breaches, especially lately with stuff going on. Of course, data backup and recovery, that's been out there and somebody's been singing that song for a long time. Yeah. They don't know anything about cyber threats other than, it's a thing. And so it's like their top concerns are just what they hear the most about. They don't understand any of it. They just hear the most about it.
Mm-hmm. And it gets back to the importance of education about what's really happening. And if they don't understand these, they also don't understand, because this is a C-suite person, they don't understand that this is business risk management that they should be worried about. Mm-hmm. I mean, they clearly don't see cybersecurity as a business risk, or they would at least know more about how to tie these together.
Yep.
So when we look at that big picture of what we went through, tying it all together so that those of you who are listening to us would know how to tie it all together, let's net it back to what we just talked about, the 5 threats. While we say that's the 5 threats in healthcare, I can assure you these are the 5 threats that every business should worry about. Mm-hmm. And if you focus on these 5, which, the committee did a great job narrowing it down because they picked these like 2017, 2018, I guess 2018.
Yeah.
No, it had to be probably, because it came out in 2018.
It probably took an entire year to narrow it down to 5.
Yeah. So the big meeting, they narrow it down to 5. We weren't part of that, but it is absolutely, if you focus on those 5, then you will pretty much be prepared for what's coming at us. Mm-hmm. So number 1, phishing, which they were often concerned about. But that encompasses social engineering is right along those same lines. Mm-hmm. They couldn't care less about that. Business email compromise, rarely concerned about it, but it is phishing. That's what happens when you're phished. And email security, they're sometimes concerned about, but that's what phishing takes advantage of, failures in email security. So that's a nice, tight little bundle there. Mm-hmm. What do you think, based on sometimes concerned, rarely concerned, couldn't care less, for all of the associated things? Is it even worth it for them to be concerned about phishing?
No, I mean, it's one of those things where if you have good email security and you understand social engineering and you've got protections in place for business email compromise, you probably could say, I'm not super concerned about phishing. My people are tested. They go through training. We have everything locked down. We have good security. I'm not concerned about phishing. I think we have a handle on it. You could say that.
Yeah, I mean, it would be more likely to just say, I'm often concerned about all those things.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I would say. Would you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, even though I created the list, I think mine would be often concerned about everything. Like everything would be on
everything on the list. I am often concerned about.
I'm often concerned about.
I don't lose sleep over them unless something big's going on.
Right. Yep. I mean, that would be me. There's not a single one that I could not care less about, or that I'm rarely concerned about. Mm-hmm. Or even that I'm just sometimes concerned about. I think I'm often concerned about all of them. I mean, it's the business I'm in. And it's one of those things where when you doing this day in and day out, you know more about what's going on than the average person. And so you are more aware and then sometimes more concerned.
Okay, so let's put it another way. You know this client or this company that answered this survey. You know this. What should, because it's not their business like it is ours, what should they, across just the ones we grouped there with phishing, where phishing, social engineering, email compromise, email security, what should they be rating that at as their consultant? If you were telling them, here's what you should be rating it at, what would it be?
Like, just from what I know about their systems and stuff like that?
Yeah. Yeah.
I would say that I would be rating social engineering. Knowing how he answered it, I would rate it as you should be losing sleep over it. Because if you're not at all concerned about it, you should definitely be losing sleep over it.
Yeah, you gotta learn.
Yeah. Business email compromise, email security. I mean, honestly, so much of what happens in security starts with email. That should be at the top of the list. It should be often concerned or I lose sleep over it.
Oh, I mean, yeah, to me, you start with email protections because that gives you a judge of how the business cybersecurity posture is right off the top.
Yep. Yeah, because if you can get a handle on email security and social engineering, you can knock out a large chunk of the threat that's happening. So go back to mailing your letters and no email.
Off the grid.
Yeah.
And don't think that, we'll just start doing text messages or SMS messaging and we'll be better. No. Don't think that.
Yeah. I saw somebody going through a mailbox one time and I'm like, look at the hacker.
One of the local post offices here had to move their little mailbox, the solid metal mounted to concrete mailboxes were getting ripped off.
Wow.
People were stealing all the mail, breaking into them, or just dragging them away they go steal a front end loader or something. And so, yes, it's still a concern no matter what you're using today. All right. So ransomware, we already talked about. I mean, that's a huge threat.
Mm-hmm.
And they're sometimes concerned about it. If anything should keep you up at night, it should be ransomware.
Yeah. Yeah. And I couldn't figure that one out because there have been some very high profile ransomware attacks in our area. And the only thing that makes me even think anything about why they would even say that is because they don't consider themselves large enough to be a target, because everybody seems to think they have to be targeted. I mean, I just had a conversation last week. They were like, I don't know why anybody would target me. We only had 3 computers and we're a nonprofit. I'm like, they're not targeting you. You're just tripping over a landmine that they set up and you become a casualty. It's not like somebody came and specifically targeted you.
You can be targeted even if you're small for 2 reasons. 1, you're connected to somebody they're after.
Yeah.
And 2, because you're small, they know your security sucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So those 2 reasons combined would make you a target. So you have to assume, it's one of the things that I told a pediatrician group one time. They're like, how would we possibly be a target? And I'm like, multiple reasons. Obviously, just identity theft alone as a pediatrician group, whoa, just huge. But you could even be a national security target. And they're like, no, we're pediatrician.
I'm a pediatrician.
I was like, okay, are you aware, is it possible that some of the kids that you treat, their grandparents work in the defense industry? Mm-hmm. Is that possible? Is it possible that some of the grandparents that are even parents work in the defense industry or a supplier of equipment or technology in the defense industry? I'm going to wager That's high in most places.
Mm-hmm.
That there's some connection somewhere. And if what we know about people's passwords and you get the name, date of birth, place of birth of all the grandchildren,
Yeah.
you could be a target. And it could be a target. I mean, especially these days, people are crazy.
Yeah. I had a presentation I did for somebody last year, and they had that same question. We're small. Why would anybody target me? And I said, and we were talking about social engineering and how, she's like, well, what can they possibly get off of learning about me? So I don't put anything out there that's valuable. And so I said, I said, all right, let me get back to you on that. I'll call you back tomorrow. Give me about an hour to go through your stuff, and I'll come back and answer that question.
You did a little OSINT, huh?
I did a little OSINT, and didn't take long. So I called her back the next day, and I said, I gave her address and all that kind of stuff, the normal stuff that's really easy to find. And I said, oh, by the way, you have a 1-year-old grandson who's currently in the hospital. And she goes, how'd you know that? I'm like, because you posted about it. You posted about you had a grandson. I went to another one of your relatives' page and realized that he was in the hospital. I said, now, if I were to spoof a call from the hospital to you at midnight and say, calling you from the hospital, you need to get here immediately. It's about your grandson. How fast do you think you get out the door? And she's like, in 30 seconds. I'm like, yes. How long do you think it would take you to figure out that was a fake call and for you to come back home? She's like, I don't know, an hour, 2 hours? I'm like, yeah. And how long will it take me to get into your house while you're gone? She's like, okay, what do I sign up?
Exactly. It's like they don't really get it.
No.
We had that where we talked about where we had William Price try to attack us, and we were both a wreck waiting to be hit. And we were, and then it was like, which one of us is going to get hit? Is it going to be me? Which one of our team is going to get hit? And you can hear when he was talking about it, I mean, what he went through trying to find things, because we're both trying to lay low, and people get mad at me because I didn't see something on Facebook. I was like, I don't know, unless somebody tells me to go, and I go. I would love not to have an account, but I cannot for various reasons.
I don't post a whole lot on there. And when I do, it's usually business related. And, I'm very careful not to give out a lot of information. Now, on the flip side of that, I have family members that want to post everything, including what they ate and how it came out in the end.
Yeah.
It is nerve-wracking how much they'll post sometimes. I mean, I've even seen them post like, oh, I'm so excited for next week. We're going to Disney for a 10-day vacation. I'm like, thanks. I appreciate you telling everybody that you're going to be away from home for the next 10 days.
I know, right? I mean, that's why, we try not to post things. It's like, when we're at HIMSS, you and I were posting things, but we knew people were at home.
Yeah.
And I don't post like I've been on a trip and I'll post something that's a picture from 3 months ago, had a great time here. And they're like, oh, are you there now? No.
Yeah. We had my wife's got a podcast, and I had said something on one of the podcasts about we're going to be in such and such a place. And, if you find us, I'll buy you a drink. Well, the podcast didn't release for like a month later. And somebody emailed and was like, are y'all still in so-and-so? We'd love to meet up. I'm like, that was a month ago.
No.
I ain't about to tell you in real time where I am.
No. I mean, would I say like, okay, I'm going to be at HIMSS, but who's going to be there? Do you know when the dates are? Do you know who's at my house then? Do you know where I am then? Do you know when I'm coming and going? Do you know where I'm staying? No, I'm not going to share all that.
I know.
I know you know. That's
you sounded worried when you said that.
It's always a concern. All right, so let's wrap this up. Though when we got to the 5 threats, we got ransomware. They're sometimes concerned about it. We've talked about that repeatedly. Mm-hmm. Third-party software vendor breach. Guess what?
Yeah.
Hello. my guess is that's probably how a ransomware attack's going to get to them. But they're often concerned about that, but only sometimes concerned about ransomware. Right? I mean, okay. And then data backup and recovery, they're often concerned about, which most of the time you need it because of ransomware, which they're only sometimes concerned about.
Yeah.
You know? So, and if they're often concerned about backup and recovery, do they know things like their restore point, their RPO, restore point objective, and their RTO, the restore time objective? Those are key pieces to having a backup and recovery plan.
Yeah, just the fact that you're concerned about your backup and recovery is concerning.
Yeah. That you're often concerned about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, the loss or theft of device, they're rarely concerned about that. And as you already mentioned, that goes back to the next piece, which is the insider accidental or intentional loss. They're often concerned about that, but rarely concerned about the loss of device.
Yeah.
And data in the cloud, they're sometimes concerned about it. Well, guess where most people will screw up and lose data and give people access to it? In the cloud. So we get there. And connected devices was a fifth threat on the 405D list. And while you don't specifically ask about it, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that it would not go above rarely concerned, if at that.
I would probably have to define what a connected device is before I could get them to answer it.
Exactly. Yeah. IoT.
Because you know what they're going to say? They're going to say, everything we have is wireless. We don't have anything connected.
So of the things you ask about, we just went through all that list, and all it left out that didn't reference was the compliance piece, which we all, some people don't have to worry about that. But, and wait, let me bring this back around. The compliance piece. Do they even know if there's state privacy regulations that might apply to them, or FTC or FDA or any of those? No.
I can tell you that they have breach notification requirements because every state has them.
Yeah. So, but they don't worry about those.
They don't even know about them. I can almost promise you.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not even aware. And then the generic cyber threats and incidents, which really apply to all of them.
Yeah, right.
Which they are often concerned about. So
that's why I like that one. I love that last question. Yeah, it's kind of like the 18th identifier.
Exactly. While we're looking at this one case from a overall standpoint and your experience, I'm going to say this is a pretty normal response.
Yeah.
It's not wildly different.
It is. And then the most interesting part is when I come back about 6 months to a year later and I ask them these same questions, how different they respond once they've had a little bit of education and they kind of understand the complexity and they see the risks and all that. They really change the way they view these things. And that's what I want.
Well, and yeah, I mean, that's exactly why we say there's a 2-year process. Once people start working with us to the point where they feel they have their hands around it, because when they start working with us, they have no idea they should be worried about all these things. So it is an education thing, which is another reason we have looped back around to the importance of educating everybody about cybersecurity and privacy concerns, because they're not aware that they should even worry about it. So I can't even fix something if you're not even worried about it. And there is our communication disconnect.
Yep. I'm not in IT anymore. I'm in cyber risk management.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, we do business risk management. Because we're looking at, the privacy part, the breach notification requirements, the cybersecurity part, the IT part, the, confidentiality, integrity, and availability concerns. And often those are overlooked. Everybody worries about confidentiality, But in the big picture, you have to also worry about integrity and availability of your data.
Tis true.
So, one SMB cyber survey and only one question on one SMB cyber survey. There is a lot to learn there.
Yep.
So hopefully y'all learn something.
Yeah. And if you have an IT provider, then as we went through this, how would you have rated yourself on these things? What would be your concern level? And if you are a person who provides IT support, ask yourself some of the same questions. What about your clients? How concerned should they be about certain things? And do you have the same feeling? In other words, you think they should be concerned and they think they should be concerned at the same level. That would be a good thing.
You're on the same page. Communication is happening.
Yep.
What is it? If there's no understanding, then communication is not happening. Didn't we learn that in an episode?
I think so. All right, folks, that is our show for today. Thanks for listening. And remember to share us out and give us away and pimp us out and whatever else you need to do. For Don and myself, remember, HIPAA's not about compliance. It's about patient care.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.